I never thought my own daughter would be ashamed to see me on her wedding. That's not the kind of thing a man prepares himself for, you know? You go through life with all its ups and downs, with all the crap jobs and busted knuckles and sleepless nights, thinking that at the very least, family is the one thing that holds steady. That's what I believed, at least. I held on to it like a lifeline through some pretty dark times. And then one morning, standing in the corner of a church vestibule with a borrowed suit that didn't fit right, I learned just how wrong a man can be about the people he loves most. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To really understand how I ended up in that church, unwelcome at my own daughter's wedding, you have to know what came before. You have to know the kind of life I lived and the kind of man I tried to be, even when the odds were stacked against me. Because none of this happened in a vacuum. It was a slow slide, a gradual buildup of choices, lies, and buried truths that finally came crashing down that day. The unexpected moment, the hook that yanked the ground right out from under me, happened a few weeks before the wedding. I had just gotten off another brutal shift at the factory. My hands were still grimy from grease no matter how hard I scrubbed, and my knees ached from standing 12 hours straight. I had stopped by the diner near my apartment because, well, cooking for one never held much appeal after Linda died. I sat at the counter, sipping burnt coffee, and that's when I heard two women at a booth behind me talking about the big wedding in town. Apparently, it's going to be the event of the year, one of them said, her voice dripping with excitement. The Dawsons don't do anything halfway. Money like that, they could have flown everyone to Paris if they wanted. The Dawsons. The name hit me like a punch in the gut. Because my daughter Emily had been seeing a guy with that name, Andrew Dawson. Rich kid, clean cut, the kind of man who never had to worry about a utility bill or whether he could afford new shoes for his kids. I didn't hate him, not really, but I didn't trust him either. Rich men didn't live in the same world as folks like me, and they sure as hell didn't understand what it meant to work for something. I turned on the stool and asked the waitress if she knew who they were talking about. She gave me that look. You know, the one people give when they think you're about to embarrass yourself, and said, "Oh, you mean Emily Dawson's wedding? The Dawson boy is marrying a local girl. Supposed to be beautiful." For a second I couldn't breathe. Local girl? That was my daughter, Emily Dawson. She hadn't told me she'd gotten engaged, let alone changed her name already in conversation. I sat there with my heart pounding, feeling like the whole diner was spinning. That's how I found out my only child was marrying into a family so rich and powerful that people spoke their name like it meant something more than just money. When I finally got home that night, I sat in my recliner staring at the walls, trying to piece it together. Why hadn't she told me? We weren't estranged, not really. Sure, we'd had our rough patches. She was a teenager once, after all, but I thought we had moved past all that. I thought she knew I'd done everything in my power to give her a chance at a better life after her mother passed. Every overtime shift, every meal I skipped so she could eat better, every worn-out jacket I wore another year so she could have a new coat, it had all been for her. And now she was marrying into wealth so great she didn't even think she needed to tell me about it. The next day, I called her. She picked up, cheerful but distracted, like she didn't have time to really talk. "Dad, hi. Sorry, it's been crazy with all the planning. How are you?" "How am I?" "Emily, I had to hear from strangers at the diner that you're getting married." "What the hell? You couldn't call me?" There was a pause, and I could hear her exhale through the phone. "I was going to tell you, Dad. Honestly, it's just everything's been moving so fast. Andrew's family has this whole team of planners, and they've been scheduling things nonstop. I didn't want to bother you until it was all settled." "Bother me? Emily, I'm your father. There's no such thing as bothering me when it comes to something like this." Her voice dropped a little, like she was bracing for an argument. "It's not like that, Dad. You'll be there, of course. It's just different. His parents have certain expectations." That word, expectations, stuck with me like a splinter. Whose expectations? The Dawsons? Did they not want me there? Or worse, did Emily think I wasn't good enough to sit among them in my second-hand suit and work-worn hands? We didn't argue. Not exactly, but the call ended cold. And from that moment, I knew something was off. Something I couldn't quite name yet, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth that wouldn't go away. And that was just the beginning. The real gut punch came 2 weeks later, when I showed up at her bridal fitting to surprise her, thinking it would be a sweet gesture. Instead, I walked into a room where her future mother-in-law, Margaret Dawson, was loudly complaining to the wedding planner that Emily's father doesn't exactly fit the image we're trying to present. I froze in the doorway. She hadn't seen me yet. Perhaps it would be best if he attended discreetly. Maybe not in the photos. These events are about legacy, after all. Emily didn't say anything at first. She just stood there in her dress, looking like a stranger to me. When she finally spoke, it was quiet. I'll talk to him. Talk to me about what? That I wasn't welcome at my own daughter's wedding? That was the moment everything broke. That was the hook that pulled me out of the life I thought I knew and shoved me into something darker, something I didn't yet understand, but could feel pressing in all around me. I stood there in the doorway of that bridal shop longer than I should have. Long enough to hear Margaret Dawson continue on about presentation and social standing, her words dripping like poison into the air. She didn't even lower her voice. To her, I wasn't a man with feelings or history. I was a blemish and inconvenience. And my daughter, my Emily, just kept her eyes down, fiddling with the lace on her gown, silent as if silence was safer. Finally, I cleared my throat, and every head in the room turned. Margaret looked at me like she'd just seen a rat crawl across her tablecloth. The planner gave a nervous smile. Emily froze, pale as the dress she wore. "Dad," she said, her voice too bright, too forced. "What are you doing here?" "I thought I'd surprise you," I said, stepping inside, my voice heavy. Didn't realize I was walking into this. Margaret didn't bother hiding her disdain. "Mr. Carter, I presume." "Well, this is unexpected." Unexpected. That word again, as if my existence itself was a disruption to their perfect little plans. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, to drag my daughter out of that place and remind her who stood by her through every scraped knee and broken heart. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at Emily, waiting for her to say something, anything that would tell me I hadn't lost her. She didn't. She looked at me with pleading eyes, the kind that begged me not to make a scene. And in that moment, I understood. She was ashamed of me. Maybe not in her heart, but in that room, in front of them, she wanted me small and quiet. I left without another word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence heavier than it had ever been. I pulled out the old photo albums I hadn't touched in years. Emily with frosting on her face at her 5th birthday. Emily holding up her first report card with a gold star. Emily at prom, smiling in that red dress Linda would have loved. I'd raised that girl with everything I had, and now she was slipping through my fingers like sand. I poured myself a drink, something I hadn't done in a long time. The burn of whiskey felt like penance. The next morning, she called. "Dad, I'm sorry you had to hear it like that." "Like what, Emily?" "That your future in-laws think I'm not good enough. That I should stay out of sight so I don't ruin their perfect photos." Her silence was answer enough. "Listen," she finally said, her voice trembling. "It's complicated. Andrew's family, they're not like us. They care about appearances. If you come, if..." I cut in. "What do you mean if? I'm your father, Emily. There's no if." She sighed. I don't want any fights. I don't want them looking down on me. Please, Dad, just try to understand." Understand. That word felt like a knife. I understood more than she thought. I understood that somewhere along the line, she'd decided money and status meant more than the man who raised her. We didn't hang up angry, but we didn't hang up okay either. The weeks leading up to the wedding were hell. Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened. I tried to keep my head down at work, but even the guys at the factory were talking about the Dawson wedding. It was in the papers, on local TV. The Dawsons weren't just rich, they were practically royalty in that town. Their money touched everything: businesses, charities, politics. Everyone wanted to be seen near them. Everyone but me. Then came the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't invited. I only found out because a coworker's wife worked catering, and she told me how beautiful Emily looked, how grand the hall was, how Andrew gave a speech that had everyone in tears. Everyone but me. That night, something in me broke. I realized I wasn't just being pushed aside. I was being erased. The day of the wedding, I put on the only suit I owned, the one I'd worn to Linda's funeral. It was a little tight in the shoulders now, but it was all I had. I walked to the church early, hoping maybe I could catch Emily before things got busy, maybe have a moment alone with her. But when I got there, I was met at the door by a man in a black suit, one of those quiet types who didn't smile. He blocked my path with a polite but firm, "I'm sorry, sir. Family only." "I am family," I said, my voice rough. I'm the bride's father. He looked me up and down, and for a second I thought he might laugh. Wait here. He disappeared inside, and when he came back, he said, Miss Carter asks that you take a seat in the back. The back. Not the father of the bride's place at the front. Not the aisle walk. The back, like some distant relative who barely mattered. I sat there as the ceremony began, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Emily looked radiant walking down the aisle, but she wasn't on my arm. She was on Andrew's father's arm. That was my breaking point. My wife had died too young, and I had promised her I'd raise our daughter right, that I'd be there for her always. And here I was, alive and breathing, yet erased from the most important day of her life. When the vows were exchanged, I slipped out the side door. I couldn't watch. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap, and I sat on the church steps, staring at my hands. The same hands that had held Emily when she was born, the same hands that had built her dollhouse, the same hands that had carried her home when she fell asleep in the car. Hands that weren't good enough anymore. That was my loss. Not money, not status, but the one thing I thought could never be taken from me, my place in my daughter's life. The night after Emily's wedding, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with the lights off, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound, going over every moment in my head. The way she wouldn't look at me during the fitting. The way that security guy had blocked the church door like I was some drunk off the street. The way she let Andrew's father walk her down the aisle. I tried to tell myself it was just pride, just me being stubborn. But deep down, something darker gnawed at me. This wasn't just about money or appearances. It felt bigger, heavier, like a curtain had been pulled halfway back on something I wasn't supposed to see. 2 days later, I got my first real taste of it. I was at work, standing over the conveyor, when one of the guys from shipping, a wiry kid named Nate, came over and said, Hey Carter, you see the paper? No. Why? He tossed it down on the table. Front page, Dawson wedding unites powerful families. The photo showed Emily in her gown, Andrew grinning beside her, Margaret Dawson looking smug as a queen. And there in the corner, almost blurred out, was me. Just the edge of my face, caught in the background, eyes downcast as I slipped out the side door. I stared at it, so long the letters blurred. Then I noticed something odd. A man in the photo, standing near the Dawsons, someone I didn't recognize. Tall, sharp suit, strange eyes that seemed too pale. The article didn't mention him, but he was there in almost every shot from the reception, always just behind Andrew's father. That night, I cut the photo out and pinned it to my fridge. I didn't know why, just that something about him bothered me. A week later, I finally heard from Emily. She asked me to come by their new house for dinner. When I pulled up, I felt like I'd driven into another world. The place wasn't a house, it was a fortress, high gates, long driveway, a building so modern it looked like it belonged in some tech billionaires magazine spread. I sat there for a minute, wondering if I should even knock. Emily answered the door, looking tired but happy. She hugged me, quick and light, and said, Dad, I'm glad you came. Inside, everything gleamed, glass, steel, expensive art on the walls. Andrew shook my hand like a politician, polite but distant. Dinner was served by staff, not cooked in a kitchen. And halfway through, who should walk in but the man from the photo, the one with the pale eyes. Andrew introduced him as Mr. Kale, a family advisor. He didn't eat, just sat in the corner, watching. His gaze lingered on me longer than I liked. After dinner, Emily walked me to the door. Dad, please, try to get along with them. They're different, but they're good people. I wanted to believe her. But when I glanced back and saw Mr. Kale still standing there, his eyes fixed on us like he was memorizing every detail, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The real crack came a few nights later. I was walking home from the store when I noticed a black car idling across from my building. Tinted windows, engine running. I went inside, pulled back my curtain, and watched. It stayed there for hours, not moving. The next morning it was gone. At work, I tried to shake it off. But then Nate came over again, pale as a sheet. Carter, you won't believe this. My cousin works IT at a lab upstate, right? He says the Dawsons have contracts there, big, secret ones. Something about experiments. Human trials. I laughed it off, but inside my gut twisted. That night, I looked again at the photo on my fridge. That pale-eyed man, Mr. Kale. Something about him didn't fit, didn't feel human, almost. And that's when the calls started. At first, just static when I picked up the phone. Then a voice, faint, almost mechanical. Stop asking questions. I hadn't asked any questions, not out loud anyway. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I got another call from Emily. Her voice was strained, almost frightened. Dad, I can't talk long. Just, please, don't dig into things. Promise me. Emily, what are you talking about? Dig into what? But before she could answer, the line went dead. That was the last time I heard her voice for weeks. I didn't know it yet, but the Dawsons weren't just rich. They were part of something much larger, something that stretched beyond money and politics. Something old, hidden, and dangerous. And by trying to hold on to my daughter, I was about to stumble right into the middle of it. After Emily's last call, silence settled in like a sickness. Days passed, then weeks. No visits, no messages, no explanation. I tried calling her, but the number always rang once before cutting out. I even drove back to that fortress of a house, but the gates were closed, and a man in a dark suit stood just inside, watching me without moving. He didn't speak, didn't wave me off, just watched, still as stone, until I left. I told myself she was busy, caught up in her new life, but that wasn't the truth, and I knew it. My gut told me she wasn't free to call, that something, or someone, was keeping her from me. It started eating at me at work. I made mistakes on the line, burned my hand on a hot press, lost track of shifts. My supervisor pulled me aside and said, "Carter, you need to get your head on straight. You keep this up, I'll have no choice but to let you go." I nodded, but his words slid right past me. My head wasn't in the factory anymore. It was at that house. It was with Emily. The first real crack in the facade came one night when I found an envelope shoved under my apartment door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was Emily. She was sitting at a long table with Andrew and his parents, smiling, but her eyes told a different story. They looked hollow, tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Standing behind her, just barely visible in the frame, was that same pale-eyed man, Mr. Kale. On the back of the photo, in hurried handwriting, were 3 words: "She needs help." I didn't recognize the writing. I didn't know who sent it. But it confirmed what I already felt. Something was wrong. I started digging, quietly at first. Old newspaper archives, online forums, whispers at the diner. The Dawsons' name was everywhere, but never the whole story. Business deals that never made sense, properties they owned but never used, donations to research labs nobody ever heard of. Every trail circled back to the same word: experiments. I didn't know what kind, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. One night, while flipping through old records at the library, I found a small article from years back about a fire at a Dawson-owned facility. Official cause: electrical fault. Casualties: none reported. But the photo of the wreckage showed something odd: cages, reinforced steel, like something meant to hold animals or people. That's when I realized this was bigger than Emily's marriage. She wasn't just marrying into wealth. She was being folded into a machine that had been running quietly for decades, maybe longer. I wasn't alone for long. One evening, as I walked home, a figure fell and stepped beside me. A woman, maybe late 30s, sharp eyes, worn leather jacket. "You're Carter, right?" she asked. I stiffened. "Who's asking?" "Name's Rachel. I worked at one of their labs. I know what they're doing. And if your daughter's with them, she's not safe." I stopped dead. "What do you mean, not safe?" Rachel glanced around like she expected to be followed. "They don't marry for love. They marry for bloodlines. For control. Your daughter's part of a program, whether she knows it or not. And if you care about her, you'll listen before it's too late." I wanted to call her crazy, but something in her tone told me she wasn't lying. Over the next week, Rachel told me more than I could take in. According to her, the Dawsons weren't just rich, they were tied to something ancient. She called it the experiment, a project running quietly since the 1940s, hidden behind layers of corporate shells and political favors. She said it wasn't about money or power in the traditional sense. It was about human nature itself. Changing it. Controlling it. "Think about it," she said one night over coffee. "You ever notice how the Dawsons never lose? No scandals stick, no rivals last, no deals fall through. That's not luck. That's design. They've been shaping things for years." "And Emily?" I asked, my throat dry. Rachel hesitated. "They chose her. They always choose carefully. Certain traits, certain family lines. It's not an accident she caught Andrew Dawson's eye." Her words made my stomach twist. My Emily, just a piece in some generational game I didn't even understand. But the Dawsons must have caught wind of my digging, because that's when the harassment started. One morning, I woke to find my apartment door kicked in. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just the photo of Emily ripped in half and left on my bed. At work, two men in suits showed up, claiming to be auditors. They asked my boss questions about me, about my hours, my reliability. The next day, I was let go due to restructuring. And then, worst of all, Emily's bank card was used to wire money to an account in my name. Tens of thousands of dollars I'd never seen before. Cops showed up at my door that night asking questions about fraud. They were cutting me off, isolating me, making me look like the unstable one. The lowest point came when I finally managed to see Emily again. I spotted her at a charity event downtown, flanked by Andrew and his parents. She looked beautiful, but thinner, worn. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares, and called her name. Emily, it's me, your dad. She froze, then turned. For a second, her mask slipped, and I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. She glanced at Andrew, then back at me. Dad, you shouldn't be here, she whispered. I just need to know you're okay. Just tell me you're okay. Before she could answer, Andrew stepped between us, smiling for the cameras. Mr. Carter, always a pleasure. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were cold. I think it's best you head home. Emily has new responsibilities now. You understand? No, I don't, I said, my voice shaking. She's my daughter. I raised her. You don't get to. Security grabbed me before I could finish. They hauled me out like a drunk while the crowd watched. The last thing I saw before the doors shut was Emily, standing frozen, tears in her eyes, but saying nothing. That was the moment I lost hope. They had her. They had everything. And I was just a broken man on the outside, powerless, discarded. But in the quiet after, when the anger settled into something harder, I realized something. They'd underestimated me. They thought shame and loss would keep me down. They didn't know what a desperate father could do. And that's when Rachel told me the truth, the part that shattered the world I thought I knew. When Rachel first told me the word experiment, I thought she was exaggerating, maybe trying to scare me into action. But sitting in that dim cafe across from her, listening to her lay it all out, I realized she wasn't just another whistleblower with a grudge. She was terrified, and it wasn't the kind of fear you fake. They don't just choose their partners for wealth, she said, her hands wrapped around her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her steady. They choose them for traits, genetic markers, resilience, creativity, intelligence, things most people wouldn't even notice. Your daughter, she's part of their next phase. Next phase of what? I asked, my throat tight. Rachel looked me dead in the eye. They're trying to rewrite humanity, piece by piece, generation by generation. I leaned back, shaking my head. You expect me to believe that? That some rich family is secretly breeding people? Not just them. The Dawsons are one branch. There are others, scattered all over. Different names, different fortunes, but connected. They started after the war, quiet projects hidden inside defense contracts and medical research. But it goes back even further. Hundreds of years. Maybe longer. Her words made my stomach twist. It sounded insane. And yet, I thought about the way Andrew's father carried himself, like a man who knew things the rest of us didn't. I thought about Cale's pale eyes, inhuman and cold. And I thought about Emily's face at the wedding, beautiful but drained, like something had already been taken from her. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Rachel hesitated, then leaned closer. Because I was part of it. I worked in one of their labs for 4 years. At first, I thought it was just genetics research, disease prevention, fertility treatments. But then I saw what they were really doing. Embryos with altered DNA. Children raised under observation. Families destroyed when someone didn't meet their expectations. I couldn't stomach it anymore. I stared at her, searching for a crack in her story, but there wasn't one. Only exhaustion, and a deep guilt she couldn't hide. What do they want with Emily? I asked. Her answer came in a whisper. Her bloodline. Yours, too. They've been watching her since she was a child. Maybe longer. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Watching her? Since childhood? That would mean every choice, every struggle, every sacrifice I made, it hadn't been ours. It had been part of their plan. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I met in secret. She showed me documents she'd stolen before she left the lab, redacted reports, photos of test subjects, charts filled with symbols I didn't understand. One file stood out, Project Aeon. Inside were fragments of notes about integration of human hosts and stabilization of hybrid offspring. Words that chill me to the bone. What the hell does this mean? I asked. Rachel closed the folder, her jaw tight. It means they're not just tampering with genes. They're blending something else into us. Something not human. I laughed, bitter and hollow. Aliens? That's where you lose me. She didn't flinch. Call it whatever you want. Alien, otherworldly, extra-dimensional. The truth is, it's real. I've seen it. I've seen them. And if your daughter's married into the Dawsons, then she's already in the middle of it. I wanted to walk away, to call her crazy, to pretend this was just paranoia. But I couldn't. Not after everything I'd seen, not after what I felt in my gut. The turning point came one night when Rachel handed me an old photograph. It was black and white, dated 1952. A group of men in lab coats stood outside a military hangar. In the center was a younger man who looked almost exactly like Andrew Dawson. Same jawline, same sharp smile. That can't be him, I said. 1952? That's impossible. Rachel's eyes were steady. It's not Andrew. It's his grandfather. Or maybe great-grandfather. But do you see the resemblance? They don't just pass on wealth. They pass on something else. Something that doesn't fade. I stared at the photo until my hands shook. The faces around him were blurred, but one stood out crystal clear, Mr. Kale. He hadn't aged a day. That's him, I whispered. That's the man I saw at the wedding. Rachel nodded. He's been around a long time. Longer than you want to believe. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I finally accepted it. Emily wasn't just lost to wealth and status. She was caught in something far older and more dangerous. And if I didn't do something, she'd be consumed by it completely. The problem was, the Dawsons had power I couldn't touch. Money, influence, secrets older than I could imagine. What did I have? Just a worn-out body, a broken heart, and Rachel's scraps of stolen truth. But maybe that was enough. Because I'd lost my place in Emily's life once already. I wasn't about to lose her soul. The night after Rachel showed me the 1952 photo, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I sat in my apartment in the dark, the only light coming from the refrigerator, staring at the faces in that picture. Mr. Kale's eyes looked back at me across 70 years like he'd been waiting for me to notice. At some point near dawn, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Tonight, 11:30, underpass at 4th and Bell. Bring no one. I thought about ignoring it. It smelled like a setup. But my gut told me it was connected to Emily. I forwarded it to Rachel. She called me immediately. That's one of their dead drops, she said. Someone inside wants to talk. It's risky. I don't care, I said. If there's a chance to get to her. You won't get to her tonight, she cut in. But you might get something you can use. She paused. I'll follow at a distance. If anything goes wrong, I'll call it in. The underpass was empty except for an old pickup parked in the shadows. Rain dripped from the concrete. The streetlights above threw long streaks of yellow. A man stepped out of the truck. Thin, nervous, mid-40s. He kept glancing over his shoulder. "You're Carter?" he asked. "Yeah." He handed me a small thumb drive. "Don't ask my name. Don't contact me again. If they know I met you, I'm finished." "What's on it?" "Proof." He turned to leave, but stopped. "Get your daughter out while you still can." His voice cracked. "They're not just changing her. They're changing you too. You just haven't noticed yet." Before I could ask what he meant, he jumped back in the truck and drove off into the night. Back at my apartment, Rachel and I plugged the drive into her laptop. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a folder popped up. Inside were dozens of files, photos, lab reports, video clips. One video showed Emily sitting in a white room, electrodes on her temples. She looked dazed, answering questions from an unseen voice. Another showed a baby, not hers, too young, but its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, the same pale shade as Kale's. The reports were worse. Lists of genetic markers, references to non-terrestrial integrations, and something called Phase 3, stabilization through progeny. My name appeared twice, next to Emily's, as source material. I felt the blood drain from my face. What the hell does this mean? Rachel swallowed hard. It means you're not just her father. You're part of what they've been tracking. Your line. Your genes. That's why she was chosen. I couldn't breathe. Every overtime shift, every sacrifice, Every moment I thought was just life. It had all been watched, measured, logged. Not to help us, but to use us. Rachel closed the laptop and looked at me. You see now why you can't go to the police. Why you can't just walk up to the gate and demand her back. They own everything. The only reason you're still walking around free is because you're more useful to them than locked up. I stared at the blank screen, numb. So what do? Her voice was quiet but steady. We build a record. We find others like you. We show the world. I laughed bitterly. Show the world what? That rich people are running alien breeding programs? They'll call me crazy before the first headline. Not if we get proof no one can deny, she said. And I know where to get it. But it means going into one of their facilities. You'll be risking everything. I thought about Emily's eyes in that video, hollow and far away. Thought about the baby with the glowing eyes. Thought about Linda's grave and the promise I made when she died. I'm in, I said. Rachel nodded once. Then we start tomorrow. That night, lying in bed, I felt the weight of it pressing down. My daughter wasn't just ashamed of me because I was poor. She was ashamed because she'd been groomed to believe everything about me was small, weak, ordinary, while they were extraordinary. But the truth was uglier. And the ugliest part was this. If what Rachel said was true, Emily might already be carrying something inside her that wasn't hers, wasn't mine, wasn't human. I didn't sleep at all. By morning my decision had hardened into something sharp. Whatever it took, money, blood, my own life, I was going to pull her out, even if she hated me for it, because she was still my daughter. And they hadn't taken that from me yet. Rachel was the one who knew how to get inside. She had worked in one of their facilities for years, she said, and while security had tightened since she fled, some patterns never changed. Every system has a weak point, she told me. Theirs is arrogance. They believe no one can touch them. We spent days planning, poring over stolen maps and scribbled notes she'd kept hidden in safe houses. The facility closest to us sat on the edge of town, disguised as a pharmaceutical research lab. To anyone driving by it looked ordinary, low buildings, parking lots, a white sign out front with a meaningless company name. But Rachel swore it was one of their core sites. If Emily's not there, she said, there'll be data on where she is. I didn't sleep much that week. I couldn't stop thinking about what we might find inside. The videos on that thumb drive replayed in my head, especially the one of Emily with those wires on her temples. Was she drugged? Brainwashed? Worse? And what if we found her changed? The thought made my stomach twist. On the night we chose, Rachel showed up with a duffel bag full of equipment. Not weapons, at least, not in the way I expected. Just simple tools, bolt cutters, a crowbar, gloves, black clothes. She handed me a flashlight and a mask. You sure you're ready? She asked. I nodded, though my hands shook. I don't have a choice. We drove in silence, parking half a mile away and walking the rest through the woods. The building loomed out of the darkness, sterile and silent, lit by floodlights. Cameras there and there, Rachel whispered, pointing. But their blind spot is the maintenance entrance. 2 minutes between patrols. We sprinted across open ground, crouched low, and slipped through the door after she cut the lock. Inside, the air smelled faintly of chemicals, cold and clean in a way that felt unnatural. The corridors stretched white and endless, lined with numbered doors. My heart hammered in my chest with every step, but Rachel moved with practiced precision, counting her turns, keeping low. Finally, we ducked into a room filled with file cabinets and old terminals. She booted one up, plugging in her drive to bypass the login screen. Watch the door, she said. I stood there in the dim light, every nerve stretched thin. Minutes later, Rachel cursed under her breath. They wiped most of it, but I found references to her. Your daughter. She turned the screen so I could see. On it was a chart with Emily's name and a string of codes. Beside it, one phrase stood out. Phase 3 integration, success pending. What does that mean? I asked. Rachel hesitated. It means they've already begun. And if she passes their thresholds, she won't be the same. I gripped the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. Where is she? Rachel clicked through more files, then froze. Here. They moved her to a secondary site. Rural, isolated. Coordinates are here. Before she could copy them, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. A metallic voice echoed through the halls. Security breach. Sector 4. All units respond. Damn it. Rachel yanked the drive free and stuffed it in her pocket. They know we're here. We sprinted into the corridor, feet pounding against the floor. At the far end, two figures appeared, men in black suits, moving fast. Their eyes gleamed pale under the red lights. "Run!" Rachel shouted. We tore through the halls, twisting and turning, until we burst through a fire exit into the night air. Floodlights snapped on, and the roar of engines filled the lot as black vans screeched around the corner. "Split!" Rachel shoved the drive into my hand. "If they catch me, you still have this." "No." I tried to grab her, but she pushed me hard. "Go, Carter. For your daughter." And then she was gone, darting into the shadows as the vans closed in. I ran the other way, lungs burning, crashing through the woods with branches tearing at my arms. Behind me, I heard shouting, dogs barking, the whine of drones overhead. Somehow, I made it back to the road. I stumbled to my car, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys. Tires squealed as I pulled away, the facility shrinking in the rearview mirror. But Rachel wasn't with me. Back at my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, soaked in sweat, the thumb drive clutched in my hand. I didn't know if Rachel was alive, or captured, or worse. I plugged the drive into my old laptop. The coordinates blinked on the screen, taunting me. Emily was out there, somewhere remote, hidden, and now I was the only one left to get her back. But as I sat there, staring at the map, I heard a knock at my door. Hard, deliberate. I froze. The knock came again. When I finally opened the door, my stomach dropped. Standing there was Emily, but something in her eyes was wrong. When I saw her standing there in the doorway, my heart leapt and broke at the same time. Emily, my little girl. The same face I'd watched grow up year by year, but not the same eyes. They weren't glowing like Kale's, not yet, but they had a sharpness, a strange clarity, that didn't belong to her. "Dad," she said softly. I reached out, my throat tight. "Emily." "God. Emily, are you all right? What did they do to you?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. For a long moment she just looked at me, studying me like I was the experiment. Then she smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. "I wanted to see you," she said. "Before things change." "Before what changes?" Her smile faded, and something pained flickered across her face. "You don't understand. You never could. But I love you, Dad, and I need you to let me go." "No," I said, shaking my head. "Never. They've done something to you, but I can fight it. I can save you. Just come with me now, Wheel." She cut me off. "It's already inside me. It's been inside us for generations. Don't you see? That's why they wanted me. That's why they wanted you." My legs nearly gave out. "Me?" She nodded. "They've been watching you since before I was born. You think your life was your own, but it wasn't. Every decision, every struggle, every loss, it all fed into this. Into me." I staggered back, ball rising in my throat. All the years I thought I was fighting for her, raising her on my own, protecting her, I'd been feeding right into their plan. Before I could respond, the apartment door burst open. Black-suited men poured in, their movements smooth and inhuman. Behind them came Andrew, immaculate in his tailored coat, and Mr. Kale, his pale eyes glinting like knives in the dark. Andrew smiled politely. "Mr. Carter, I apologize for the intrusion, but your daughter belongs with us now. Surely you understand." I stepped in front of Emily, my fists clenched. "She belongs with no one but herself. You don't own her." Kale tilted his head, studying me like a specimen. "You are mistaken. She is not separate from us. She is the culmination of you." Andrew placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. She flinched but didn't pull away. "Come, my love," he said. "It's time." I looked at her, desperate. "Emily, don't do this. Fight them. Please." For a second, I thought I saw doubt in her eyes. But then she whispered, "Dad, I'm scared." That was enough. I lunged. The next few minutes were chaos. I don't remember all of it clearly, just flashes. My fist slamming into one of the suited men, the crunch of bone, the flash of pain as another drove his knee into my ribs. Emily screaming. Kale standing still in the center of it all, untouched, like a conductor watching an orchestra play. Somehow, I got free long enough to grab Emily's arm and drag her toward the back door. We stumbled into the alley, breathless. "Run!" I shouted. "Don't look back." But she stopped. She pulled her arm from mine, shaking her head. Tears streamed down her face. "I can't," she said. "It's too late." The suited men closed in, Andrew at their center. And then something impossible happened. Emily's body stiffened, her back arching. Her eyes blazed pale white. The air around us seemed to hum, a low vibration that rattled my teeth. The suited men froze, as if waiting for a command. Andrew smiled like a proud parent. See? She's already transcending. She doesn't need saving, Carter. She's becoming. I looked at her, my daughter, my Emily, and for the first time I saw not just fear but power. A power she couldn't control, a power that wasn't hers. Her voice came out strange, layered, like two people speaking at once. Dad, help me. That was the moment of choice. I could step aside, let her fall completely into their hands, and maybe she'd live, not as Emily, but as something new, something alien. Or I could stop it, even if it meant losing her forever. My heart tore in two. Every instinct screamed to hold her, to protect her, to believe I could pull her back. But deep down I knew, once she crossed that line, there was no coming back. I pulled the small crowbar from my belt, the only thing I had left from the break-in, and gripped it so tight my hands bled. I'm sorry, baby, I whispered, and I swung. The blow didn't kill her. God knows I didn't have the strength for that. But it knocked her off balance, broke whatever surge had been taking hold. She collapsed in my arms, trembling, eyes fading back to normal. The suited men roared and lunged, but Rachel's voice rang out from the rooftops above. Move. Flashbangs exploded in the alley, white light and smoke filling the air. Rachel appeared out of the chaos, yanking me and Emily to our feet. Run, she shouted. This time we did. By the time we reached her car and sped off into the night, Emily was unconscious in the back seat. I sat twisted around, holding her hand, tears running down my face. Rachel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. You bought us time, she said. But they won't stop now. You know that, right? I nodded, choking back a sob. I don't care. She's my daughter. And as long as I'm breathing, they don't get her. We drove all night. Rachel didn't stop once, not for food, not for gas, not even for rest. She seemed to know back roads no map could show, winding us through forest and farmland until the city lights were nothing but a memory. Emily lay stretched out in the back seat, her head resting against my arm. She hadn't stirred since the alley, but every so often her body would twitch, like she was fighting something in her sleep. I kept checking her pulse, whispering her name, stroking her hair like I did when she was little. She didn't answer. Where are we going? I finally asked Rachel. There's a place, she said, her eyes locked on the road. Off-grid. People like me, people who got out, we keep safe houses. It's not permanent, but it'll buy us time. Time for what? She didn't answer. By sunrise, we reached an old farmhouse tucked deep in the woods. The paint was peeling, the roof sagged, but it was far from the roads, hidden among trees. Rachel helped me carry Emily inside. We laid her on a cot in the corner. She'll wake up, Rachel said, though her voice wasn't sure. I pulled up a chair and sat by Emily's side, my hands wrapped around hers. Her skin was warm, too warm, like a fever. I wanted to believe she was just sick, just exhausted. But I knew better. That thing inside her wasn't resting. It was waiting. Rachel busied herself checking the windows, setting up a laptop, scribbling notes. She worked like someone who knew she couldn't afford to slow down. Finally, I asked, tell me the truth. What's happening to her? Rachel stopped, her shoulders tight. She's in between. They started the process, but you disrupted it. That's why she's still herself. Still herself, I repeated, staring at my daughter's face. But for how long? Rachel didn't answer. Over the next few days, I barely left her side. When she finally woke, she was weak but lucid. Her first words were, Dad, where are we? I swallowed hard, tears welling in my eyes. Safe. You're safe with me. She looked around the room, confused. Then her memory caught up. Her face crumpled. I'm not safe. You saw it. What they did to me. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. I don't care what they did. You're still my daughter. That's all that matters. But she shook her head. You don't understand. I feel it. It's in me, Dad. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear them. I hear him. Kale. She clutched my shirt, her voice breaking. What if I lose myself? I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hold her tighter. Rachel laid out the choice plain a few nights later, after Emily had drifted back to uneasy sleep. You can keep running, Carter. Keep her hidden, keep fighting off their hunters. But you'll never win that way. They're too many. Too deep. Or, she hesitated, then met my eyes. Or you stop it. Permanently. My chest tightened. You mean kill her? I mean free her, Rachel said, her voice steady but sad. Before she becomes something she never chose to be. I slammed my fist on the table so hard the lamp shook. Don't you dare say that. She's my daughter. She's all I have left. Rachel didn't flinch. Then you'd better find another way, because every day you wait, she slips further. And if they find her before you decide, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. The choice haunted me. Every time Emily laughed faintly at something I said, every time she looked at me with fear in her eyes, I thought about Rachel's words. Was I saving her, or just delaying the inevitable? I thought about Linda, too. What would she want me to do? Protect Emily no matter what, or spare her from a fate worse than death? I couldn't decide. I didn't want to. And then, one night, Emily made the decision for me. I woke to find her cot empty. Panic surged through me. I searched the farmhouse, then the trees outside. Finally, I saw her standing barefoot in the clearing, her nightgown glowing in the moonlight. Her eyes were pale, brighter than before. Emily, I called. She turned slowly, her voice layered again. It's coming, Dad. I can't stop it. You have to. I stumbled forward, shaking my head. No, don't say that. We'll fight it together. I'll find a way. She smiled sadly, tears shining in her two bright eyes. You already did. You gave me love. That's the only thing stronger than them. But it's not enough to keep me. She reached out her hand. Please, before I hurt you. I fell to my knees, sobbing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't raise a weapon against my own child. And then the night split open with the sound of engines. Headlights cut through the trees. They had found us. Engines growled in the distance, headlights slashing through the forest like searchlights. Rachel burst out of the farmhouse with her pistol drawn, scanning the tree line. They're here, she hissed. We've got maybe 2 minutes. I turned back to Emily, still standing in the clearing, her eyes faintly glowing. She didn't flinch at the noise. She looked almost peaceful, like she'd been expecting this moment all along. Dad, she said softly, you can't run anymore. Not from them. Not from me. I felt my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. I won't give you up. Not again. Rachel grabbed my arm, urgent. Listen to her. If they take her alive, it's over. For her. For you. Maybe for everyone. You know what you have to do. I can't, I choked out. You can, Rachel snapped. Because you love her. And sometimes love means letting go. The headlights grew brighter, engines closer. Black shapes moved between the trees. Cale's voice carried across the clearing, calm and commanding. Carter, step aside. This is not your fight. I stepped in front of Emily, fists clenched. The hell it isn't. She's my daughter. Cale emerged from the shadows, pale eyes gleaming, flanked by Andrew and 2 suited figures. He looked exactly as he had in the photograph from 1952, untouched by time. He raised a hand, and the men behind him stopped. Your line has served well, he said. But her evolution is not yours to decide. She's not an experiment, I shouted. She's flesh and blood. She's mine. Cale tilted his head slightly, almost pitying. She is more than yours. She is ours. Emily gripped my hand, her voice breaking. Dad, please. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The forest held its breath. In my right hand, Rachel pressed the cold metal of her pistol against my palm. In my left, Emily's trembling fingers clutched mine. One choice meant saving her from them forever. The other meant losing her to something I couldn't even name. I thought of Linda, of the promise I made at her bedside, that I'd protect Emily no matter what. But protect meant more than keeping her alive. It meant keeping her herself. Tears blurred my vision. I kissed Emily's forehead, tasting salt. I'm so sorry, baby girl. She smiled faintly. It's okay, Dad. I know. And then I pulled the trigger. The world shattered in silence. Emily crumpled into my arms, her glow fading, her eyes soft and human again in the last seconds. She looked at me, calm, grateful, even as her life slipped away. I love you, Dad, she whispered. And then she was gone. Cale stood motionless, watching. For the first time, I thought I saw something like surprise in his pale eyes. He gave the smallest of nods, then turned, signaling the others. Without another word, they melted back into the forest, their headlights fading into the night until only darkness remained. Rachel crouched beside me, her hand on my shoulder. You did the only thing you could. I rocked Emily's body against my chest, sobbing until my throat burned. I killed my daughter. No, Rachel said gently. You saved her. But the words felt hollow, like ash in my mouth. We buried her the next morning beneath the trees. No markers, no name, just a mound of earth that only I would ever know. Rachel stood with me in silence, her face drawn. They'll be back, she said at last. They don't stop. You know that now. I nodded, numb. What will you do? She asked. I looked at the grave, at the forest beyond, at the endless sky. I don't know. Maybe keep fighting. Maybe make sure no other father ever has to make this choice. Rachel studied me for a moment, then nodded. Then I'll help you. Weeks passed. The Dawsons vanished from the news, their names still untouchable, their power undiminished. To the world, nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I went back to work for a while, tried to live like I used to, but it was a mask I couldn't hold. Every face I saw in the crowd, every child laughing on the street, I wondered, are they part of it? Are they next? And late at night, when the silence pressed in, I thought I heard Emily's voice. Not layered, not alien, just her, the way she used to sound, calling me Dad. I never knew if it was memory, dream, or something else. In the end, the choice haunted me, as I knew it always would. I had saved her from them, but at the cost of everything I lived for. And yet, deep down, I couldn't shake one question. What if she was the future they needed? Not theirs, not mine, but humanity's. What if, in saving her, I had doomed us all?